to be selected. Some employees think that just because they get picked, their name comes out. In order to keep each selection random, every appropriate employee is in the pool each time. There is no bias to the selection, and there is no waiting once the employee is notified. It is a company's responsibility to keep the selection pool up to date and maintain the chain of custody. All the situations we have seen so far are sensitive to the individual's rights in relation to the need for public safety. That delicate balance is continued in the return of an employee to a driving position after he or she has completed rehabilitation for substance or alcohol abuse. We'll look at what 3 managers have to say about an employee returning to work after rehabilitation.
You know this is the busiest time of the year for us.
We have to get Tom back in place. I can't hold his driving position open much longer.
Well, I got word from the substance abuse professional that the rehab facility says he's responding well to his group sessions. His counselor seems to think he has good motivations for staying clean, but he thinks he needs more time to work through some issues.
Well, what type of issues?
Well, I don't think the issues are important. None of us are experts in the field. The point is that the substance abuse professional needs more time to evaluate the recovery process.
Well, we have to get him back soon. We need him. The other drivers are having to fill in for him, and now they're starting to ask questions.
Yeah, I know. I just tell them that he's taking care of some personal business, like we talked about. Tom can tell them whatever he wants to when he gets back. We just need to be patient. These things take time. We certainly don't want him back before he's ready.
When do I get him back behind the wheel?
We have a lot of routes to cover.
When we get the go-ahead from the substance abuse professional that he's ready to come back. We'll get a test from him on the day he comes back, and as many as they say he needs. At least we know about Tom that he wants to make some changes. Who knows? Maybe Tom's experience will get some others to come forward.
Boy, this is a tough issue. But I do want to support the integrity of this project, so I guess we'll just have to wait.
Unannounced testing for an individual in rehabilitation and recovery may be the incentive he or she needs for continued abstinence. In addition, such monitoring helps ensure public safety when it comes to commercial drivers. Rehabilitation and recovery from substance or alcohol abuse is a process that is different for every person. It's important to have a professional evaluate a person's progress in the rehabilitation process. Return to duty testing and follow-up testing is an important piece of the evaluation. Although testing is regulatory, it can be a positive activity for the individual and the organization. For the individual, a negative test is an affirmation and motivation to remain drug or alcohol free. For the organization, a negative test means the organization is fulfilling its commitment to public safety. It's a win-win situation for everyone. We've heard about the types of testing that can occur as a result of the new law, but we haven't really heard about the inclusion of alcohol testing. Tamara Cagney is a substance abuse professional. She is a registered nurse and has had 12 years' experience in the treatment of individuals with substance abuse and is also a marriage and family counselor. She's with us today to discuss how alcohol can affect a person, even in small amounts.
Hello, I'm Tamara Cagney, and today we're going to be talking about alcohol and the effects of alcohol. I come to you from a nursing background and also have spent the last 12 years working with employees and troubled employees in the workplace. And I think the first place to start with all of the new regulations that are out is really trying to get an overview about what's coming down the pike and what you're going to be faced with in the workplace. And all of the regulations that are out right now are really trying to do a balancing act between the rights of the individuals in the workplace and the safety of the individuals in the workplace and the public. So we can't just do, we're just concerned with safety and no one has any rights. We can't just do, we're going to protect everyone's rights to a far degree and ignore safety. It's a very complicated balancing act, and that's what all of the regulations are relating to these days. So on the right side, we have that alcohol is legal. It's a legal substance. It's actually a legal drug. It's something that is very socially accepted. Most organizations and companies have alcohol involved in something, whether it's the summer picnic or a special dinner, an awards or recognition dinner. A lot of companies serve alcohol. It's also a self-administered substance, meaning you can buy alcohol, you can purchase it anytime, you can use it whenever you like in the general scheme of things. And there are a lot of choices. And so what we're looking at is balancing your personal time and your personal choices with your professional time and your professional choices. You can buy alcohol, you can self-administer alcohol anytime. The problem is if you choose to do it where it affects your job. So what we're really talking about here is just alcohol use, not alcohol abuse, not alcoholism. We could talk a lot about the ravages of alcohol and the big significant impact that alcohol has on medical costs. But what we're talking about today is just alcohol use. Everybody's a couple drinks. So we're not looking here at people that have problems with alcohol. We're just looking at employees that use alcohol. If you drink at all, this applies. Not that you abuse alcohol or you drink too much alcohol. This is drink any alcohol. And some of the real basic things is recognizing that an ounce of liquor equals 4 ounces of wine, equals 12 ounces of beer, that the alcohol content in these is the same. So when you hear people say, I just drink beer, so your alcohol is suspended in more fluid. You may spend more time leaving the room, but it is the same amount of alcohol. So when people, it's not just that I drink wine or I just drink beer and I don't drink hard alcohol. The alcohol content is the same. So we have to sort of start out with the basics around that. When we're talking about the effect of alcohol, alcohol affects everyone differently, and this is, again, just the effect of a drink of alcohol. Alcohol goes to the stomach and the intestine is absorbed through the intestine and the stomach. It moves then into the bloodstream and moves to the liver where it's detoxified. Now that's a real interesting word, detoxified. It means that alcohol is toxic to the body. One shot, one drink, one beer, your body has to adjust. It has to detoxify this chemical that you've put in the body. It does impact your body, physically, mentally, just one drink. It doesn't have to be abuse. And what the rule of thumb is 1 ounce of alcohol per 1 hour. And you really want to look at ounce here. It's not 1 drink per 1 hour, because some drinks have a lot more than 1 ounce in them, depending on, whether you're doing purple zombies or a glass of wine. I mean, there are different ounces of alcohol. So it's not by the glass, it's by the ounces of alcohol inside the glass. And it takes 1 hour to detoxify 1 ounce of alcohol. So if you're drinking some nice combination drink that ends up having 3 ounces of alcohol, don't think 1 drink. Think 3 ounces, 3 hours. And it makes a big difference to your size, whether you've eaten before you drink, and how your particular body metabolizes alcohol. So there's no real rule of thumb. I can't say if you drink 1 beer, you're going to measure this amount of alcohol if they do an alcohol breath test. It depends on your body. It depends on if you're large or small. But it all does affect you. It's not that you can drink a lot more if you're large. The alcohol concentration is still in there. So we're looking at the effect that it has both physically and mentally, being affected by all of these things. Now, when we talk about driving under the influence, the level that they're talking about in the breath test is 0.10. The Alcohol Department of Transportation regulations are talking about 0.02 to 0.04 and above. So this is a significant difference. They're talking about a much lower level. If we look at this chart, pick one, 160 pounds, 2 drinks, you're probably going to blow an 04. So we're really looking at both time and amount. Those are the two significant pieces. So if you drink 3 beers, it will take 3 hours to detoxify an ounce of alcohol. So if it's close to when you're coming to work, then it can obviously still be in your system. If it's the evening before and you're reporting to work at 8 a.m. in the morning, you go back to this rule of thumb, 1 ounce per 1 hour.
If I drink a lot of coffee or if I take a cold shower, will that help?
Well, if you took a cold shower, you would be wet and alert, but you would still have the same amount of alcohol in your body. And if you drank a pot of coffee, you would be jangly and still have the amount of alcohol in your body. Neither cold showers, walking the room, drinking coffee, drinking those wonderful concoctions with raw eggs and Tabasco and things in them, none of those are going to affect the amount of alcohol in your body. Once the alcohol's in your body, the only way it gets out is to go through the liver. And the liver can only handle so much at a time. It is basically a factory that detoxifies the alcohol, and it can only handle so much volume at one time. So if you put more coffee in, you're adding caffeine and you're adding fluid, but you're not doing anything to affect the amount or concentration of alcohol that you have in your body. In the Department of Transportation regulations, they're talking about a much different level of alcohol than we're used to thinking about, because we think about impairment. We think about legally impaired at 0.10 or 0.08. But here we're talking about 0.02, and that can be as little as 2 drinks. So depending on your size, again, and your metabolism and what you've eaten, if you have a drink at lunch, and in a lot of organizations, lunch is your time. If you have a drink at lunch, odds are you will probably test positive if you're tested. 0.02 is a very low level. It is really saying, what it's really saying is that we don't want alcohol in the workplace. We don't want alcohol brought into the workplace in a bottle. We don't want alcohol brought into the workplace in your body. We don't want any alcohol in the workplace, whether you bring it in inside of you or you bring it in in a container. So they're really talking about getting to the workplace alcohol-free. Anything below 0.02 is counted as a negative, as a no level of alcohol. Now, obviously, if it's 0.01, there is some alcohol, but this is the cutoff. It's 0.02. So you're really needing to make some choices about not having any alcohol in your system. So it's not an issue of not being under the influence or not being drunk or abusing alcohol. It's not having any alcohol in your system when you come to work. Well, now your right to drink ends 4 hours before your shift begins if you're in a safety-sensitive position. If you're a commercial driver, it's 4 hours before. Some foods and desserts that have alcohol in them, and you can actually test for alcohol. So one of the things that you really need to look at is your brain doesn't know that this came from cough medicine. Your brain just knows there's an ounce of alcohol. So if you're doing, there are a variety of sleeping aids, cough medicines, mouthwashes, as I said, foods. You have to be careful about the choices that you make. And look, now there are a lot of cough medicines on the market that do not have alcohol. There are mouthwashes that do not have alcohol. And those are the kind of things you really want to look for. It is possible, but one of the things that is in the Department of Transportation regulations as a protection is if you test positive, the second test, they wait 15 minutes, so that if you've just swished something around in your mouth that has alcohol in it, you could test positive, but you probably will not test positive in the follow-up test. And that's one of the protections that they've put in the regulations to protect employees. Okay, any questions?
Yes. If I'm selected, do I have a choice between urine or breathalyzer testing?
Actually, right now with alcohol, it's all breath testing. The urine testing with alcohol is not, has not been validated to the extent that it has with drugs. You know, with drug testing, they use urine tests. With the breath test, they have a lot more experience and a lot more documentation for breath testing. Now, there are some conversations going on with Department of Transportation, and they're open for comments right now about doing blood tests for alcohol. But because of the way alcohol is metabolized, we'll probably never use urine tests for alcohol testing. We'll be using breath testing or blood tests. And breath testing, obviously, is a lot less invasive, a lot less intrusive. There are no needles.
Are there differences in the type of breathalyzer machines used between counties or between states? And
Yeah, one of the things that they're doing with the Department of Transportation regs is that you have to be a certified BAT. Isn't that great, right? That is a breath alcohol technician. So that you have to be certified, you have to be using machines that are calibrated to very specific requirements, you have to be testing on equipment that has been tested, and you have to have had training. So what they're really trying to do is put in standards so that that type of thing, that you just aren't going anywhere. You're going to someone that's a certified BAT, that's had the training and the machines are calibrated. You know that you're working with equipment that's going to give you a comparable result. Any other questions? Okay. I want to talk a little about the effects of alcohol. And again, this is just the effects of alcohol. This is not the effects of alcohol misuse. People always look at these things when we start talking about the liver and the stomach, and they think about people that are alcoholic or have abused alcohol and they're, you know, have cirrhosis of the liver and look terrible. We're talking about 1 ounce of alcohol. The alcohol goes into your body, it needs to be detoxified by the liver, and the alcohol affects all of these areas. It affects the stomach. Those of you who have ever experienced having a couple drinks without having eaten and it sort of gives you a bad feeling in the stomach, alcohol can irritate your stomach and your intestines, and it can cause bleeding just because alcohol is toxic. It's just the chemicals. And for each person, every individual has their own sort of sensitive organ. For some people, alcohol will affect their stomach. Other people, it will really affect their liver. Other people, it will affect their heart. It has some effect on all of these areas, but you may have a different effect. So you may get an upset stomach from drinking alcohol and other people don't. Your stomach's just a little more sensitive to it. Obviously, the liver, which is the factory that detoxifies alcohol, has all this alcohol going through it. And it can affect the liver, and that's where we see cirrhotic livers and cirrhosis of the liver, and that's really where the liver tissue has died. So it does have an effect, obviously, if you keep pouring this stuff through your liver. The immune system, and this is an interesting one because we have all of these cold remedies and flu remedies, you know, the hot toddies and do a little hot rum and tea or hot brandy. Alcohol affects your immune system. It defeats your ability to fight disease. So if you have a cold and you're taking antibiotics, you're going at cross purposes if you have that nice hot toddy that Aunt Ethel told you to do, because it really does affect your ability to fight disease. So if you are not feeling well, the last thing you want to do is drink alcohol. And if you're taking antibiotics and you're actually feeling better, but you're still on a regime of antibiotics, you shouldn't be using alcohol because it really will defeat the ability of the antibiotics, and it lowers your ability of your immune system to fight disease. Alcohol does affect your reproductive tract. We know about fetal alcohol syndrome and have obviously seen a lot in the press about it. The use of alcohol is the leading cause of preventable birth defects in the country. One of the things that you need to know about the effect on the heart is that it really can irritate and enlarge the heart muscle. It does affect the heart as one of the areas. The area we think about the most is the brain. And that's the organ that most people think about when they relate it to drinking, because that's what we see. We see people getting drunk. We see the effects of the alcohol. Judgment's the first thing to go, and it goes even with a small amount of alcohol. So when we're talking about just a low amount of alcohol, that 0.02 to 0.04, the areas that even low amounts affect are judgment and coordination. Now, obviously, at a low level, you're not going to be staggering drunk. But where it will impact is in non-routine reactions, where you have to just go with instinct. You have to react immediately. You have to hope that your reflexes are together and react immediately. And that's where coordination and judgment, even with low levels of alcohol, are affected on the job. And that's why it's particularly important with safety-sensitive positions for the public, for your coworkers, and for yourself. Because you probably could do routine. It's not the routine at those real low levels. It's the unexpected. Any questions about the physical effects?
I've heard that the older you get, your liver kind of metabolizes the alcohol differently.
It really does. The liver is, again, the place where alcohol is metabolized. And as you grow older, the ability to detoxify alcohol is sometimes reduced. So we'll have people who, when they were young, would drink, a six-pack and in a weekend and get buzzed, and now we'll have people who are much older drinking the same amount of alcohol and getting much more heavily intoxicated. The liver is not breaking down and detoxifying the alcohol as quickly, so that you'll see people with a higher level of intoxication. And oftentimes people who are used to drinking just a routine amount will find that their response, their physiological response to alcohol changes over time. That shouldn't be real surprising to us, because our response to alcohol changes during times of stress too. So, we're a physiological machine, everything is connected. So if you are having a very bad time and you're real stressed out and you use alcohol, alcohol at the beginning can make you feel a little better, but in the long run ends up being an additional stressor. And your body actually metabolizes alcohol at a different rate. When you're under a lot of stress, it also metabolizes it differently as you age. So when you are older, and this is something we're seeing with more of an epidemic of older people who have severe alcohol problems, they haven't changed their alcohol use. They don't think they have a problem. It's the same they've always been drinking, and it's been okay for years. But it's not okay anymore, because their body can't metabolize the alcohol the way it used to. Let's talk about work. With the regulations, we're looking at 4 hours before shift. So it really is making you, if you are in a safety-sensitive position, you have to be conscious about whether or not there's alcohol in what you're eating, alcohol in what you're drinking, and when you're drinking. An example that's used a lot is if you are working shifts and you're coming in at midnight or 11 and there's a football game on. You can't have that last beer. You have 4 hours before you begin work that you cannot drink. And that includes lunchtimes. You're not supposed to be on the job with alcohol in your body, not just in a container, but alcohol in your body. So it's 4 hours before shift. Drinking at lunch is something that is part of a lot of people's work. And if you are in a safety-sensitive position, it can't be part of your job. You have to make some decisions about that. Even if lunch is technically your time, an hour later, you're on the job, and it's your professional time. So again, it's that balance between your personal choices and your professional choices. And we're really talking about professionalism here. One of the things that alcohol affects is your perception, even at low levels. And that's, again, that judgment, coordination, perception. And that comes to play most with the unexpected, whether it's an unexpected confrontation with someone or an unexpected confrontation with a piece of equipment. It's really important to recognize that even a low use of alcohol, not alcohol abuse, not alcoholism, affects your ability to react in a crisis, in an emergency, in an unexpected. Snap judgments, snap reactions are the things that make the difference, and that's where alcohol makes a difference, even at a low level. Hangovers. That's not alcohol in your body, right? If we use the 1 ounce to 1 hour rule, and you went out and partied hardy the night before and got absolutely blasted, but it's been 6 hours, but you feel terrible. I mean, what are some of the effects? What do hangovers feel like? Headache.
Groggy.
Nausea. How's your personality?
Irritable.
Irritable. Not terrific to be around. That comes into the workplace. So, you know, it's not just saying the effect of alcohol is you drink it, but we also have to look, when you're making your professional decisions, about the effect of the hangover from alcohol as well. And that's when we get into a sort of dicier area, which is relationships and relationships with coworkers. Alcohol, for many people, does change the way they relate to people. Some people become more gregarious. They call it a social lubricant. People that can't dance and can't talk have a couple beers and can really talk and really dance. It works well for that. It affects both judgment and inhibitions. It lowers your inhibitions. So that's one of the reasons so many people use alcohol, and it's so socially acceptable. It does change your relationships. So it is important when you think about the effects of alcohol to realize that some people really get much more irritable, snappy, lose their temper. Other people get life of the party, anything goes. Really a setup for bad judgment and bad decisions, because they'll go along with anything. So it's different for each person, but you really need to think about it. And those relationships bring us into the personal effects and alcohol's effect on your personal life. And we talked a little about mood swings, judgment. Choices and decisions are the biggest piece. So we're not talking again about alcohol abuse, and we could obviously, particularly with personal life, talk about all the problems that alcohol can cause in a personal relationship. But here we're just talking about the use of alcohol. And again,